everybody. Welcome back to the Trick Podcast with Joey and Goso TV on this beautiful Friday. It's almost 2 p.m. here Pacific. I'm about to record a podcast. You may not know that I actually host a podcast. It's about 2-3 times a week. Sometimes I go daily. And you can listen to that at davidtrigg.com/podcast, davidtrigg.com/podcast. But most of the time, I do the podcast. Let me see, I'm just doing a few things here before we get started. I do it just straight to audio. I don't really record the video part of it. What I do on video, as you have seen, are different things, courses and prayers and such, music, of course. But I thought that today I would do this podcast live while you are listening in. And if you would like to actually leave a comment or a question on the content, and I'll tell you the theme of today's podcast, then you can leave that in the comments below, and I will answer them at the end of the podcast. So I also want to tell you that I also teach 2 video courses. One is called How to Podcast. And so if you've ever thought about developing a second income stream, or maybe getting your content online and you don't know exactly how, you're shy, you don't have the technical how-to, you don't have the time to do it, but you have a cost, so you can go to davidtrigg.com/ I think it's called media, or maybe it's also called podcasts. You can check either of those pages out, and you can sign up for that training that I do. It's a course that I teach, and you can then learn all about that. And then if you would like to be more on the deliverance spiritual side of things, I also offer a course called Spiritual Deliverance and Healing, Biblical Healing. And you can find out more about that course at davidtrigg.com/deliverance, davidtrigg.com/deliverance. So with all that said, I'm going to now press record here on my audio recorder. And then I'm going to do my intro, and I won't be looking at the camera per se, because as I said, this is more of an audio episode, audio journal, but you can feel free to listen along. And then if you want to hear the edited and professionally mastered final product, and you can, as I said, go to davidtrigg.com/podcast, and you can listen to this episode on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever else, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you listen to podcasts, Android, iPhone, all of the above. Today's episode, by the way, is called My Story of Healing, Deliverance, and Success. My story of healing, deliverance, and success. Something that I've done before, but I've updated. I updated the content as of the last couple of years, and so I thought I'd do something today on that topic to serve as an example to, if you face some of the same hurts and hang-ups that I have faced along my journey, and yet you want to succeed in life and have a beautiful life, as I feel like I have, then these are some of the examples, some of the tools, some of the spiritual healing that's happening in my life that is ongoing. I am still walking this journey, but hopefully I can be an example to you so that we can all be healing and growing and achieving our dreams, especially here in the middle of this pandemic. Okay, so with that said, enough talking. I'm going to press play or record and get going, okay? So here we go. Oops, that's not the right button. Well, everybody, welcome back to the Trick Podcast with Joey and Goso TV on this beautiful Friday, as I like to call it, December 11th, 2020. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to this episode, talking today about my story of healing, deliverance, and success. My hope in this episode is that you will identify your own story in my story, that you will see my own healing journey from fear and anxiety, my ongoing choices to be delivered, and my ongoing pursuit of success and achievement and having a great life in Jesus' name. And so if you are at a place where you feel stuck, especially this year of 2020 and 2021, and you need an example, a guide, someone who can walk alongside of you in this journey called life, then I hope to be that example to you. So, but before I get into the actual content of this episode, I want to remind you of two different courses that I'm offering right now. One is a free webinar that's actually happening next week, December 15th. That is called How to Make a Second Income Stream Through Podcasting and Live Streaming. So if you're interested in that, you can go to davidtrigg.com/podcast, davidtrigg.com/podcast, and you can learn all about that. Now, if you would like to be more on the spiritual side of things, and you're looking for spiritual deliverance, biblical healing, then I encourage you to go to my weekly, well, it's actually a monthly membership, and where I walk you through different video courses. There's also a live call that you do with me and a couple different bonuses. So if you would like to be a part of that, you can go to davidtrigg.com/deliverance, davidtrigg.com/deliverance. Both of these courses have bonuses, including for the podcasting one, an opportunity for you to actually be a guest on my podcast and YouTube channel so that you can share your product with my audience. You can tell the world about your passion, about your goals, and hopefully help you succeed in your own career goals. So both of them have bonuses, and don't wait. This holiday season is a time for you to step into your goals for 2021. So with that said, I want to get into this content for today called My Story of Healing, Deliverance, and Success. So as you know, I started my journey of life in Nicaragua. So a beautiful country in Central America. Shout out to Managua, Nicaragua, donde yo me enamoré. And I was born a happy young man, loved by my family, my mom and dad. I had a very happy childhood. And I remember two things, especially when I was a young boy. I remember being baptized and singing with my dad. When I was baptized, it's when I believed in Jesus for the very first time. I was maybe 9 years old. It was a very significant experience of a faith journey and a faith change in my life. And then I began to play and sing with my dad in church. And that forever changed my life. The second experience was actually being under the almond tree outside of my church and seeing the gemelos play guitar. And I had never seen two young people, they were maybe 13, 14, I was 10, 11, play guitar at such a high level. They went on to become amazing musicians and professionals. And I was hooked. I thought, I want to be successful just like them. Then when I was about 13, 14, maybe a little younger actually, more like 11, 12, I went through the first traumatic experience of my life, which was war and separation. And so I was going to be drafted. And so my mom and dad made a very sacrificial, kind of like a Moses experience, and put me in a canasta, in a basket, you could say, and sent me here to Los Angeles, where my grandma lived in Long Beach, California. Shout out to the 562-213 and 310. And so I came here to Long Beach when I was about 12 years old and began my life, a very beautiful life. But the trauma had begun of separation, of abandonment, of feeling far from my mom and dad. Then in my late teens, 13, 14, I began to experience loneliness and sadness. My grandma was my friend, my companion, but I miss my parents. I remember one day I went and just hugged my grandma when she was still sleeping, and I just needed a sense of my parents. I missed them so much, and I was afraid that my grandma would die and I would be left alone. And that started in me this transition from this very happy and at peace young man to a young man who felt that life wasn't safe, wasn't stable. And so then in my later teens, 17, 18, graduating from high school, I experienced a ton of success. I was very intelligent. I got into the best universities. I had the best grades. Back in those years, as a bilingual Latino young man, I was an anomaly, and it was so fitting for me. I loved being successful and being the first in everything and winning awards. But I had this second problem, my second trauma, which was my immigration status. And for many years, I lived under the fear of being deported. And again, that lack of stability was deep within me, not only from leaving home and not having that parental guidance, but also now my immigration status, which felt to me like the end of the world if that wasn't resolved. Eventually, it was resolved. But that began this journey of fear and of anxiety in me. I didn't know it, but that was building up. Then I began to succeed in college. I got into worship music and realized how much I loved it, how people seemed to enjoy it, and it kind of brought me back to those early years when I was under the almond tree. And I found myself playing music in front of hundreds and thousands of people at age 20, 21 as a very young man, and began to succeed at a high level in the church as a church musician. And I felt truly like the John Mayer of worship. All of my senses of playing and professionalism came together. I met the love of my life, Rochelle, who was a dream come true and still is 25 years later. We bought our first dream house. We eventually owned 3 homes, 5 cars, and a dog and a bunny. We had 3 amazing teens. We've had a beautiful, successful marriage and relationship to this day. But alongside of that anxiety began to build up. I had my first panic attack when I was about 24. And thankfully, I had a friend who recommended therapy. And so my healing began, both biblically, but also psychologically, understanding my trauma, understanding some of those experiences that I just didn't understand. And so I went through 10 years of pretty intense therapy to unwind the tightness of my stomach. I got on medication, and all of that helped. I also got into fitness, and that really helped me. Yoga, weight training, clean eating, back before it was cool and hip to do all that. Got into the best shape of my life, basically at age 37, and really experienced a ton of healing. Also, spiritual formation was a huge part of that. I had spiritual directors. I prayed with priests and nuns all throughout really the country, learning from some of the best spiritual directors. Just that inward journey was very deep. I especially have, still to this day, some amazing friends that have helped me to find spiritual healing and deliverance, as well as that psychological, kind of biological part of learning my trauma and how to heal. Had some of the best therapists. Then I went to the best schools. I became an engineer at age 25, I believe, 24, as a young man, and it was a dream come true. I never thought I would do that as an immigrant with no papeles, but God was faithful, and I graduated top of my class pretty much as a computer science, a double major, both engineer and computer scientist, I guess. So I'm an engineer, and I have a lot of good memories from that. I've always loved gadgets and media and technology, coding, and all the Palm Pilots of back then. I've always loved communicating through media as well as through music and groups. Then, as I said, I began to succeed in church, both in music, but also in, I guess, what we would call now discipleship, or in groups. I became a mentor to a lot of my peers, and because of my healing and knowledge of therapy and eventually the Enneagram and MBTI and a lot of these different resources, I became, I guess, used by God to nurture young people my age and to be honest and vulnerable with them about my own experiences, my ups and downs, my behavior, and learning how to heal. And so that began in me a passion for both success at the top and also vulnerability at the bottom. Then I continued to experience great success in music. I led, as I said, church music in front of thousands, recorded my own songs, began to record a lot of songs out of my own need to understand God in a more honest way. And then I felt the call to be a lead pastor. I'd always felt that calling, or that I guess that instinct, that inkling in me to speak and to lead. I've never wanted to be somebody's employee. I've always been entrepreneurial, kind of a boss, CEO, lead person. I don't like being told what to do or having people decide my future economically and as well as in leadership. So I knew that I eventually would start my own something, a church or company or media or whatever it may be. And that began in me a journey to be now the man that I am now, not only married to the love of my life and having these three amazing young adults that we both adore, but as I said, being a coach, a media mentor, pastor, and to help people now do what I've done, and that is to succeed at life, but to take care of those injuries that people, especially young people, now face, whether it's stuff from this pandemic, whether it's fear, anxiety, depression, whether it's isolation, abandonment, hidden sins, parental stuff, emotional hang-ups, the pain of the church even, openness to all kinds of religions and all kinds of, I don't mean religions per se, although I've studied all the religions, but I mean different expressions of the church. I have doubted the church. I have left the church. I have returned to ministry. I have felt both hurt and loved by the church. And through it all, I have continued to be loved by God and accepted the gospel. Transform me, meaning Jesus on a cross. It's still what moves my heart to be a lover of Jesus. He has healed me. He has touched me. He has brought all kinds of peace and love around me and success. I will always be a success-driven person, an achiever, an Enneagram 3, Wing 4, if you're familiar with that. But even in that, I think the last maybe 2-3 years, God has been weaning me, maybe more like a slap on the face, like from success, especially in church numbers and what they call budgets and what do they call it in buildings. I have always wanted to have a big church, and it didn't resonate with me. It didn't, I guess, ring with me that's counterproductive, almost counterintuitive to healing. You can't heal in a big room. Plus, I know that my gifts are of a big church in terms of music and communication and et cetera, leading, but I find that, and I still want that, and I struggle with that every day, and I surrender it to Jesus. And if he wants to do that with me, then great. But I have learned, especially these last few years, to surrender to the process, to healing, to small communities. I don't mean Bible studies. I don't mean small groups. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about biblical deliverance and spiritual healing. And so the last few years I've picked up some trainings, especially one called Restoring the Foundations, which is a group out, I think, in Tennessee. Maybe now they've moved somewhere else. But I went through their training just this year in the middle of this pandemic, and then taught a class in the summer. And then now I'm doing a second class here this winter, and it's been life-changing for me and my students. I also have continued my media company, which is picking up steam. That entrepreneurial, techie media side of me is very strong. And so I love helping and coaching people that want to do what I'm doing, podcast, live stream, to develop a second income stream, to get their message out, just to kind of get those creative juices out to the world. But my heart remains for the local church, and especially, as I said, for healing and deliverance and success. I am one who doesn't want to just navel gaze. I believe that God has called us to a purpose, and that there is, one of my favorite verses is Proverbs 29:11, that says that God has called you and he has a great purpose for your life. For I know the plans I have for you, Jeremiah 29:11 actually. And then Isaiah 6, Isaiah 61 also are great passages and verses of mine. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon you because he has anointed you to preach good news to the captives, set captives free, because the year of the Lord of Jubilee is coming. And I love that whole process of being called, anointed, that he has healed me. Isaiah 6 talks about that cold that has come to take away my guilt. And so that's the healing, the spiritual healing. And I don't mean just quote, salvation, I mean, as I said, fear, anxiety, addictions, recovery, abandonment, addiction, so we're talking about the physical and the emotional and the psychological healing that we need. And so that's what I mean by salvation, a holistic approach, including, as I said, health and agency, having your own voice, physical fitness, yoga, breathing, learning from all the different, especially spiritually formative traditions, a contemplative life. And then being able to, as that healing occurs, be a mentor to others, and then to bring peace and love and freedom to captives. That could be your husband. That could be, if you're a young person, it could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, to yourself, to your friends. If you are a mom or a grandma, to your kids, to your grandkids. And then to do that for the sake of your purpose. It says there, for the year of Jubilee. And so we're talking about a great party, the day of gozo, as I like to call it. And so all of this healing and teaching is not only important, but it's for the purpose of Jubilee, of purpose, of joy. For me, that joy is loving my wife, singing, touching the world with this podcast, with my life, loving my beautiful wife, being a mentor to our kids, just playing my guitar and enjoying my life. And eventually, if God gives us grandkids or great grandkids, then that all would be a dream. But I believe that my wife Rochelle and I's year of Jubilee, our purpose is to change the world for Jesus, to bring healing and transformation and success and greatness to young and old, to black and white, to everyone around us in any language, and to be an example of that to you. And the way that I do that now is, as I said, through all of the different tools that you see, this podcast, the video courses, the live streaming, the music, the recordings, my sermons, my church, through mentoring, coaching. I do a lot of coaching one-on-one, a lot of it through text now, through Zoom these days, a lot of the classes that I teach. All of that, by the way, you can go to my website and find out information for that, or you can just simply start being part of our virtual church on Sunday mornings. All of that information will be here at the bottom. But my point is that, I guess at the end of the day, is that I am still a man in the journey, that I am not coming to you as a person who's, like Paul says, who's already attained it. I am a wounded healer, like Henry Nouwen said. I am someone, like Brennan Manning said, who is loved by who I am, not by who I should be. Of course, I have my hang-ups. I have my reptile brain that wants to succeed and wants to have 1,000 likes, and who gets down and anxious over this virus, or over a party, or meaning a gathering of families, or over a loss of a job, or you name it, right? I still have to work through that. Even just this week, I've had to breathe through some of these things. And so I come to you as a fellow, I guess, a sojourner along the journey of life, and as someone who is in healing. And I believe, I was talking last night to actually our group, our training that just started last night, that there might be parts of me that will never be healed. And I'm okay with that, because they move me to dependency upon Jesus, upon my beautiful wife, and relationships in my life, to my practices, and to friendships that I really hold dear. And that, like Paul says, it's in our weakness that we become strong. It makes me a more compassionate person. It lowers my ego of wanting to be a successful YouTuber or pastor of a mega church. It brings me down to earth, to be in my heart and not so much in my doing. And so that, to me, is what I hope to continue to be, is a fellow sojourner. And for the years that God wants to have me and my beautiful wife on this earth, we both want to serve and to mentor and to provide our lives an example. We hear more times than not, and this is really almost embarrassing, how people just sometimes tear up just by seeing our family picture online. And that's because mostly of my beautiful wife and our amazingly gorgeous looking kids. I bring up the back end, but I remember this one man about my age that was in church one day, and just out of nowhere, I had my family come up on stage, and at the end of the service, and this is a man who plays at churches of 10,000. Okay, so this is a very successful musician. He came up to me and said, "Trig, it made me tear up just seeing your family up there. That's exactly what I want for my family." I had another person also just recently telling me that she's been through a lot of challenges in her own childhood, and now even with her daughters, she's been through a lot of challenges. And when she just sees our picture, again, this is not a humble brag, this is just, I guess, how God surprises me all the time. She was saying, just seeing your picture sometimes on your lives makes me tear up, not only for what I want for my daughters, but for what I wish I had had when I was a young girl. And so she says, keep doing what you're doing, no matter how many likes, follows, all that stuff. And that's my journey of grace, of gozo, of joy. Gozo, by the way, means joy in Spanish. And that comes from my mom, who is a woman of joy. And plus, of course, Psalm 30, verse 6, it says that though there's pain in the night, and that's alluding to the fear, anxiety, and all of the stuff that I've mentioned, all the abandonment, though there's pain in the night, gozo comes in the morning, joy comes in the morning. And so that is kind of our mantra here, kind of our statement, as well as we will not be shaken. And some of the things you hear us talk about, viviendo la vida gozo, living on Gozo Street, just being people of grace and of love. So I think on the camera side, something just happened, right? It just turned off. So, well, that's okay, but I will continue here on the podcast. So that is basically the story. And so let me just I may have to pause my podcast, but I am going to try to fix here something so you guys can see, those of you who are on the live. There we go. Okay, now you can see. That's another camera. Not sure what happened to my main camera here. Let me turn this off. Maybe the battery has died, but I want to just tell you all that as a way to, as I said, share my life with you, invite you to honesty, vulnerability, and to healing most of all. And to know that your dreams are going to come true, even in this year. No matter if you're losing a job, if you're not feeling well, if you're dealing with fear, or someone in your life and your family is dealing with some issues, there is hope. There's pain in the night, of course, but gozo comes in the morning. And I'm an example of that. My wife, our kids, and most of all, as I said, we are in the journey with you. And so I would love to know if I'm sure something here in my story relates to you. That really is something that I desire to go from me to we. I think I have often struggled with this me-ness, wanting to make it about me and my success, in my falseness, in my shadow, in my flesh, as Paul calls it. I can try to protect myself or to find that safety in numbers, wanting to have lots of numbers and likes and comments. But I've realized that my true success comes in love and relationship, in honesty and vulnerability. And so I come to you, as I said, as a man who is in progress, and I don't want to impress or to show off or to say, hey, look at me. Really, I don't know what you can look at except my beautiful family, and that's been a grace of God. But I do want to offer my life to you, and most of all, the hope of Jesus Christ, and to frame it in a relevant way, in an actual day, kind of in tune with today way, especially, as I said, dealing and working through issues of fear, of ancestral sin, of demonic influence, of some of the emotional pain that many post-Christians are dealing with, whether it's because of the politics of the day or the materialism of old, or because now of fear and panic. Many of us that grew up in the church are tired of that, young and old, and we at our church, our virtual church, are wanting to create a new expression of the Church of Jesus Christ that is centered around the love of Christ and around vulnerability and honesty, and leading to a successful Jubilee future. And so if you relate to any of that, my invitation is to join our virtual church. And you can do that just by going to davidtrigg.com/thrive 2021, or I think it's just thrive, and you can join our virtual church, be a part of this movement of God. You don't have to live here in the LA area. We don't have to even know each other personally. You can just be someone who needs this. You need the healing, and you want to then teach someone in your life about the healing that is possible in Jesus' name. So you can go to davidtrigg.com for all of my courses and opportunities. Most of all, I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak into your life. We have hundreds of people that listen to this podcast every month. And so I thank you for being a part of my community. And come join us. Be a part of our virtual movement of healing and spiritual deliverance. And you can also join the courses that I mentioned. But as I said, just simply having you be present and having you say, yes, me too. I need healing. I need deliverance. And I need it for the sake of me and those I love around me. So thank you. My prayer for you today is that you will know that you are loved and that God wants to bring healing and deliverance to your soul. Thank you again for being here. Share this broadcast with your friends. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure that you go to my YouTube channel and like and subscribe and comment on that channel, as well as on Instagram. You can follow me at David Trigg. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you next time. Adios. Okay, well, that is the end of the live broadcast. There's the camera. I don't know what happened to this one. It just died on me. I'll have to check it out. Maybe it was the battery, but I don't know. So either way, thank God for backups, right? So that is how the podcast works. It's fast and furious and right to the point. And then I post it on iTunes and Android, iPhone, Spotify, everywhere. And you can then listen to it on high HD audio, super high quality, on quality microphones with EQ and gating and reverb and compression, all the bells and whistles. And you will notice the difference. It sounds amazing when you have it in your ear, especially if you're listening to it at night or in bed or on a run or at the store in the car. So again, thank you guys for being a part of this live stream podcast. And if you are watching this on video, then please like, comment, subscribe. If you are not subscribed to my podcast, just go to davidtrigg.com/podcast and you can sign up there. Plus all the other stuff that I mentioned, all the video courses, live one-on-one coaching, spiritual direction courses on both podcasting and a second income stream, as well as on spiritual direction and deliverance. You can go to my website and check out all that stuff there, as well as my music. I have a ton of music that I write every day. You can also get that at my website. Thank you again, guys, for being here, and I will see you next time. Hasta la pasta. I'll see you next time. Adios.